Hey guys, Booligan here with Booligan Shooting Sports, doing kind of a mega update on like 4 separate projects and an introduction of a new one. Let's cut straight to it and look at some of the projects that I've been developing and working on over the last couple of weeks and months. We will start with the oldest guy first. This is not forgotten. This is the EvoMac. This is one of the kind of earlier ones in my journey of designing and modifying 3D printed firearms. But for those who don't recall, this uses a VMAC upper, so a 9mm Mac 11 style upper with a 3D printed lower, AR fire control group, and the thing that makes this special, the ability to fit and feed Evo3 magazines, which look awesome and they work awesome. So where I last left this thing off was getting it to like 99% functionality. I was able to get it so that it feeds every round except for the last one. The last round was giving me some issues, and from what I've seen, it turns out that might just be because of the mag type I was using. So the big thing that slows this guy down is that this is designed to feed from a double stack single feed magazine. So when you look at something like a Glock magazine, it's double stack, certainly the rounds double stack in there, but they feed from one single point, so it's very narrow. That also makes these very easy or difficult to load, and one of the reasons why I don't like them. Versus the Evo, which is double stack, double feed, which means those rounds kind of move over from side to side as they're running through the magazine. The problem is this gun is not designed to fit double stack, double feed magazines, and that's where the hiccup is. So where I'm at with this is seeing if the issue that I'm having is a geometry issue with the gun itself or a problem with the magazine itself. So I obtained a factory smoked CZ Evo 3 magazine, and then I need to modify it the same way I modified this to actually even fit in the gun. So you'll notice this guy's got these narrow angled in feed lips versus these chunky boys here. That's the work that everybody who builds an EvoMac is gonna have to do, is they're gonna have to modify these magazines in order to even fit in the upper receiver of the gun. So that's where this is at. We now have another magazine to modify, to test, and to build a template for modifying these easily. But rest assured, this is not an abandoned project. It's still very much in progress. It works really, really well in this magazine for 34 rounds. It's just that 35th round just kind of goes vertical straight into the side of the barrel. Doesn't work like it's supposed to. But EvoMac is in progress, and once we're able to dial it in so it's feeding properly, I can get that guy into an accelerated beta test and get it out pretty soon. Let's talk about the most anticipated project on my channel for a lot of people. This is my Glock 19 based Halo Magnum. It's awesome. I love this thing. I love the way this thing looks. I was able to get this out to the range. The big question on this isn't the frame, isn't the lower on this. The lower on this is a print your 2A lower design, obviously very aggressively modified, but it's a known variable. It works. They work fine. There are a lot of print your 2A frames out there. The variable on this, however, is this slide cover. You may recall there is a JSD Supply Glock 19 slide and barrel in here, and then the whole thing has this cover attached to it. The question was, will my attachment method work? How this is attached, as you may recall, there's an extended printed rear plate right there, and there is a pin that is driven through the cover and that. This is all printed at 100% infill, so this is very solid in the back. The back wasn't my concern. Had a lot of people say like, oh, just set it up for RMR mounts. Well, one, that still only attaches it at the rear. That doesn't address the issues at the front. And two, not everyone has RMR mounts. Not everyone mills RMR mounts the same. You can't really plan for that because there's a lot of variables. You could only go with the Glock factory milled slides, but then you're stuck using only the Glock factory milled slides. Those are expensive. This is for everybody. So, anyways, the attachment point is now at the front. As you can see, the slide cover is sandwiched using a metal front sight and an extended screw. So it's actually sandwiched between two pieces of metal here and holds in tight. So the question was this going to work? Was it going to fly off, yeet itself into my face the second I shoot it? And I'm happy to report that no, it did not. I did have some feeding issues, which I'm chalking up to two things. One, Magpul magazines, which aren't the best, I'm finding out. And also just the need to break in the slide and the barrel and the frame. It needs to be broken in. I didn't rack it enough times, to really smooth out that. But I was just having occasional issues feeding. But I was able to get through, I think, 2.5 magazines, and eventually it was running a lot better, running about 90%. But I was able to get through about 2.5 magazines without any issues on the slide whatsoever. There's no signs of wear. There's no signs of delamination at all that I can see. It just seems to actually be working really well. It even got to the point where instead of off-axis shooting, I was shooting it like you normally would, and it was actually working pretty well for me. So the slide cover, I'm comfortable at the point with this method that I've devised, getting this into closed beta on my subscription website. So we'll be releasing these files into beta here pretty soon, in the next couple of days, to get more people testing this out and working through whatever issues they may have on it. In the things that I was expecting to fail and did not disappoint me category, my Springfield Xd Re9 based, or RE45, but we call it the RE9 because it's a 9mm based build, worked really, really well out at the range. With one exception. You'll remember this had a nice big blocky printed compensator up front. Well, now it's a drop top Roadster compensator. There's a short that I will release today. I think I'll release at the same time. That just shows this hilarious failure, really. First shot, it just popped, ripped that compensator in half. And didn't even just do that. It sent the compensator about 25 yards downrange. It just completely shot it off the gun. It wasn't until the end of the range day that we found it. And in looking at it, it's obvious why it happened. One, we need to have metal reinforcement in this compensator. Problem number one. Two, the print orientation that I did, it failed at the thinnest point. You can see the layer lines on there where it failed. It just sheared the material off. There was really good adhesion, except a tiny bit of under extrusion there to look at, but it just popped it right off. So for this one, the compensator, it was the only issue. I ran the gun for several magazines that day, and the framework's great. So this is a beta of the AWCY based XD frame design that obviously I modified aggressively to look like the RE45 from, and I will correct myself, originally from Titanfall, then from Apex Legends. I am not hearing the end of that comment chain of people saying, because I misspoke accidentally and said it originally came from Apex Legends and then from Titanfall. For somebody who has a lot of guns based on video games, I don't game that much, and I got my stuff mixed up. I apologize. Please do not crucify me anymore in the comments. So yes, RE45 from Titanfall, and then Titanfall 2, and then Apex Legends. But the frame design itself worked great. It shot fine. It shot super, super well, and actually pretty accurately for being a Springfield XD based product. Where I was seeing some wear in the frame, you could see we were kind of getting some stress marks there on the bottom. And that could be one of several things. It might just be because of this whole compensator hanging off the front and that's tied into the frame instead of into a threaded barrel. So this guy may not work out as well as I'd like with this compensator. As a frame itself, we may just release it without that chunky guy on the front with the general aesthetics, and it looks really cool. It's a really, really cool look. But like I said, it looks like I was getting some bulging here at the bottom as I was continuing to shoot. And what that may have been is as the round exits, the gases were still pushing down on this, and it might have been, you see it was getting a little bit of flex in there, and I think that might have been transferring some flex into the bottom of this. So I'll be printing another one of these frames, because this frame, once I see any stress fractures develop like that, the frame is toast. It's done for me. So we'll print another one. We'll do some redesigns and keep playing around with this a little bit. But this is promising. It's very promising that at least, if nothing else, the frame design worked really well. It just was the goofy add-on the front that was causing some problems. For the very much still a work in progress, here's my 3011 build. Sort of futuristic. This is it without the big shroud and everything on the front. But this guy is still being built. I still need to do some filing on the rails. My printed rails ended up really quite hideous on one side. One side they look good, the other side they look like a bag of trash. So I may reprint the lower. I may just take a file to it and some sandpaper and smooth it out, but it's just binding up towards the rear a little bit and not returning as smoothly as I'd like. So I need to play around with this a little bit more before we get more work done on this. But this is very much a like half finished product at this point. It just needs a lot of cleanup and polishing and working a little bit better. So those are all the projects that I've shown before. Now it's time for the introduction of a new terrible project. One of the ugliest things I've ever done. I call this the Vault Point. And it is hideous. It is inspired by the 10mm pistol from Fallout 4. In particular, it's the one from Fallout 4. And it is a modified low point version 2 frame. This particular one has a parts kit with a High Point Model C, not a Model C9 or a C380, a Model C, which is the predecessor of the C9, which was sent to me through Parts Dispensed, sort of to see if I could do something fun with it. And whether it's fun or not, we're doing something with it. But I had to figure out like what would be a good project design based around the High Point operating system and grip style and everything, and something that I hadn't done before. And I have a lot of people telling me that hey, like that gun looks like the 10mm SMG, and it got me looking at more Fallout guns, and I'm like, oh yeah, we can build a 10mm, even though it's a 9mm, but we can build a 10mm pistol inspired frame. So this guy is very, very, very strange. So there aren't a ton of modifications for the back half. It's pretty standard low point version 2. There are some changes for this particular one for it to work with the Model C frame, but when I get this into beta and released, it will be compatible with Model Cs and Model C9s, and I think C380s use the same frame. But up front, there are just some cosmetic additions, and it had to stretch up to the whole front of this into, I know this sounds like I'm setting myself up for failure, but another printed front end. I put this together after the failures of this one, so we're learning some stuff. This guy has a different attachment method, and it's a much tighter fit. It actually uses 2 M5 socket head screws with some captured nuts there to secure it in place. So good M5 hardware up front. And most importantly, there is a steel tubular liner inside this. I've got 2 versions I'm trying out. One of them is a proof of concept with a very large bore. You can see this is gaping bore down there to the gun inside, or the normal barrel inside. The other one is much smaller and is going to use more readily available aluminum liner. I'm checking out both front end designs to see which one works and which one works safely and reliably. But I think with the metal liner in there and the better print orientation, this guy, because of the way it's shaped, kind of needed to be printed like that, because otherwise you can't really print like face down on these this meat tenderizer front end. And because of that, you had these just terrible layer lines up front. Here, I was able to print this guy down, which gives me slightly angled, but more, you know, it's not going to like pop the top off of this thing. It might pop the whole front end off. I don't know. We'll see. But to absorb that main first blast of the round right outside the muzzle, it has a steel. I hate high points. There we go. It has a steel insert that the barrel is just barely inside to hopefully help absorb some of that initial blast and keep this thing from just destroying itself on the first shot. I have no idea if it's going to work or not, but that's why we test stuff. That's why we test stuff safely. But the thing just kind of interesting, the front sight is almost completely shrouded with this cover, but you can still get a halfway decent sight picture, and you just kind of put it right underneath your target and it works. But we'll get some rounds through this, see how it does. Some notes on this though, man, we got a clear chamber. The high point trigger really is pretty terrible. It's a weird pivoting system that pulls the sear down. It's gross. But hey, we might be able to make something interesting out of it that's fit for the wasteland. And because of that, we are naming this the Vault Point from Vault Tech, obviously. And once I get this dialed in and get it either running right or completely failing, I might have a buddy of mine do a custom wasteland appropriate paint job, tweak some things, tweak some angles on it. But we'll get this thing out there. So yeah, this was a long one, but I have a lot of projects. This is kind of so you guys can understand how my project ADD works. Is I take on a lot of projects, and I get a lot of them like kind of 3/4 of the way done, and just don't finish them. And when I finish them, it's awesome. You know, we have some really cool finished projects, but it's a struggle sometimes to get it from 90% to 100%. So I've got a lot of things stuck at like 90%. We'll be getting some things out into testing, things like I said, like the Halo Magnum, the Halo Glock. This thing is ready for beta. I'm confident with this. A lot of this other stuff just needs a couple, finishing touches to get out there. So yeah, that's kind of an update about what's going on. There's some interesting new things on the wall you may notice. That Calico, took it out to the range, complete failure. That magazine spring looked like a pack of soldering wire. It was horrible, and it was broken in half. So we had to get a new spring for that to get that guy running. And I have if you've been following on Instagram, I don't know if you guys follow that or not, but if you're following on Instagram, I have a very, very interesting project, AR build using just a few printed parts, but I'm going with a factory made lower and upper for that. But a very interesting project coming in the works for that. So stay tuned with those updates. If you want the most recent updates on all this stuff, always follow my other social media. I only update YouTube about once a week. But I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find all my stuff everywhere. So many thanks for all of the supporters on the channel, watching, subscribing. Got that 100,000 subscriber plaque over there, which is pretty awesome. So thank you guys for that. And stay tuned for what other crazy things we pull off on the channel. Thanks for watching.